week? I mean, I think we did a nice, like, relaxed introduction last week, right? And we got, as far as the hot plate, can everybody see? Tell me what you guys can see right now.
I see your table, a few prints, and
I can go higher. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little bit high.
We just can't see
more.
That's more. That's good.
Is that good? Does that get you the whole? Oh wait, that's better. That's better, right?
And now we can see your.
Now you can see my hot plate.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I'm gonna go a little bit higher. How's that? That's better.
Good.
Is that good? Everybody happy? Now how about the lighting?
Good. Lighting's good.
The lighting's good. Okay, because sometimes it gets a little bit too bright, which actually just makes like all the whites blow out, and then you can't see anything that's white. So
why haven't you rotated it 90 degrees? Because you're sideways. Is she sideways for you guys?
Yeah. You guys want me vertical like this? Is that better?
I think so.
Yeah. Say when. You want it like that? That's good. Is that better? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Is everybody happy?
Sure.
Happy.
Everyone comfy? It's like we're going to go for a ride. We're going to go for a 2-hour ride. You guys comfy? Okay. So, I'm just going to show you guys a couple things I have in the studio that I'm working on. One, I got commissioned to do this horse piece. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect for my class. The only thing about this piece is I already waxed it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wax another one. But you can see right now, like I printed this horse in multiple tones, right? So you can kind of see the slight variations in color of the prints, right? So I have a blue one, a gray one, a brown one, and like a warmer green one, right? Can everybody see those?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times I like to print in different photo tones. And there's a bunch of ways that you can achieve this. The way that I achieved this was digitally, right? So this was all done in Photoshop, and the images were toned in a program. But even Google, like I teach a lot of beginning photography classes or photography classes, and especially with like teenagers, I teach them in Google, right? So I just have them even use their iPhones or their cameras and upload to Google, and in Google, you will even be able to achieve sort of a wide desaturated tonal range like this, and they're basically like presets, right? So I definitely think it's nice to see what happens to the black and white in all of these different tones, and maybe maybe you even like all I kind of like all of them. I honestly don't know does anybody have a preference I mean, these are really the 4. Oh, actually, there's 5. Did you guys see that? There's actually 5. Right? So, like, actually, this is interesting. So, this is really blue. This is green. This is gray, brownish gray, right? So, then it gets warmer. So, I guess it could kind of go like that, right? Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Does anybody have a favorite color? I mean, and I think they're all good. It just kind of defines your what I call base color, right? Which is like sort of what you're starting off with. So no bright whites in any of these really, except for maybe, I don't know, there's kind of a white, like a peaky white. There's no really white in here, which is kind of an interesting thing too, right? No bright white in these tones. So that's interesting. Even the black and white one is sort of not. So I'm just right now cleaning the back. So what happens is a lot of times when I wax the front, I end up getting, paint on the back, right? And I think you guys know that I work both on paper, so wax on paper, as much as wax on wood, right? And the reason that I do the wax on paper really started because I just got so tired. I mean, physically and sort of emotionally and even financially tired of mounting photographs to wood and maybe having pieces like not turn out successfully, right? Because, you know, here's a wood panel, right? I mean, here's a piece of wood, right? So, I mean, you got to like spend money on the wood, you cut the wood, then you spend the time gluing the photo onto the wood, and then you paint it with encaustic, and then what if you don't like it? Right? Then you're kind of like, oh my God, you just feel, I think, a little bit more defeated, or like, you know, like a little bit more air is like let out of your balloon, right? You're just kind of like, oh, all right. So one of the things that I wanted to be able to do was I wanted to be able to do what I called a little bit more sketching or freestyle type work. And what I thought I could do to enable myself that type of work was to work on paper and to work in numbers. So if you're thinking about math, what I actually did was I sort of increased my probability of getting a successful piece. Okay, and I increased my probability of making more successful work by loosening the sense of responsibility and the stress, right, of all that effort, and working a little bit more what I would call like carefree or with less investment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so what happens is a couple of things. With less investment, financially and energetically, you might find yourself a little bit more creative, right? You might be a little bit more willing to take higher risks, right? Try more things and be more expressive. The downside to it is that you're limited to maybe the quantity of wax that you are able to layer onto the photo or onto the piece. Okay? However, if you start a piece on paper and it is going extremely well, you can at any time take a substrate, a board, and you can glue them with wax on it. Okay? So as to not let the board dictate you as to your creativity or the paper, right? You're kind of choosing, you know, what's going to happen. But if you do feel like you're gearing up in your layers and wanting to get thicker with a piece, or you maybe have an idea that you know you want to go very thick with wax on a piece, you need to use a substrate, okay? Because ultimately the paper, right now, I would say up to 2 or 3 coats is fairly bendable. Like I can, right? Nothing's happening. Nothing's cracking. The wax is not popping off. However, it would get to a point of stress, of like a limit, and then it would crack, right? So this is kind of interesting. This is actually wax on a stencil. And honestly, this is a lot of wax. And look, it's not really, I'm bending it, but it's not cracking. It only cracked in this one place, right? So it sort of goes to show you the sort of flexibility of the encaustic medium, and it's maybe not as brittle as you might think it is, right? So maybe it's more durable and actually more skin-like than you might think, okay? And this kind of knowledge, like this intuitive knowledge about the medium, I think just comes in time when you've been working with it consistently, like day in and day out. You sort of know and begin to know and understand what it can do and what it can't do. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate. Any questions on what I just said?
Are you limited to smaller sizes, or how big could you go on paper?
That's a really good question, Jen. So I actually really wanted to do some very large paper pieces. So I'm gonna say I could work on paper up to 4 foot by 6 foot, or as tall, as physically as tall as I am. And so this is kind of interesting, but this is Hanemule photo paper glued onto nice charcoal drawing paper. Okay. And I mean, technically, like I could say, like I don't love these two pictures together anymore, but they're a pretty landscape, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually worked on this landscape last winter because I wanted to make some landscape art, and I've never really like paid that much attention to the landscape or worked on it. But I just glued these two pieces of paper together, and there's no reason why I couldn't glue these two pieces of paper to another piece of paper, right? And then maybe even glue them to another piece of paper, okay? So that's like where my mind is going with like paper work, right? Is like gluing maybe different types of paper together to ultimately lead up to like one very thick piece and then wax it, right? And then of course the thing about that is you could frame it, or you can just like hang it like Carrie and Celia, Jen and I were in Texas together at another artist studio, and we got to see her work, which is very three-dimensional, right? So she was actually taking her paintings and her sculptures, and kind of combining them, and nothing was really flat against anything, right? Are you guys still there? Yeah. Yep. So the work was very 3D, right? And I like that. Like I've always really embraced that sort of three-dimensional, sort of irregular surface, like even imperfect edges, right? Hence, like the hand tearing that I like to do, like this, right? And I think in a way it just forces me out of what I call the box, and the box is the standard, art sizes.
Right.
5 by 7, 8 by 10, 11 by 14, 16 by 20, 20 by 24. So when you do this all day, every day, for years and years, some people use those types of confining lines as strongholds. Like they enjoy those parameters on the work. Like they like to fill the frame that's rectangular or square. It sort of helps them organize their thoughts, and they enjoy it. For me, I sort of always pushed against those types of parameters and wanted to expand myself outside of the confines or traditional standards of photography or art in terms of two-dimensional work. Okay? So hence I might glue a rectangle to an imperfect shape, or maybe even cut the shape, right? For a little while, I was very interested in sort of working in odd shape sizes with odd edges, right? So odd edges could be hand torn, irregular edges. Odd edges could also be, something hand cut and rounded, maybe, right? So that suggests like the oval, right? And this actually is historic. I mean, there used to be photographs that actually had rounded corners, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's also like the oval, right? So then you're sort of like introducing like every picture sort of having its own original, sort of more organic shape, right? And these can be totally personal to you. Also, I mean, if this type of work or this style just doesn't agree with you, then you can just totally, do straight edges, use boards. You know, you can also, I mean, this is something that you really have to define for yourself, right? So as far as how big I would go, I don't really think I have a limit. I will go as big as I possibly can. I mean, the largest piece that I've ever made was 94 tall by, I think, 60 wide. But I think I actually made bigger work than that. I did scenery for a theatrical performance, so I think I made work that was like 6 feet by 9 feet. And when I did that, I mounted the photographs to industrial metal. Like, it's called dye bond. It's spelled D-I. If I write, can you guys see if I write here? Is it backwards? Or is it?
No, it's good.
Yeah. Okay, so dye bond is a signage material made by Harbor Sales, and it's actually really cool. It's a thin metal. It's fabricated metal, and it's totally stiff, like unbendable and thin and inexpensive. But it's like an industrial signage material, like that they use for billboards. But it's very cool stuff. And when you mount the photograph to it, it gives it the strength that it needs to not bend. So you could add a lot of wax to it, but it gives you the lightness and the ability to like just pop it in a frame or stick it on the wall. And it also has sort of a modern look, right? I mean, in a way, wood is wood, right? And working with wood has a certain statement. It has a certain weight. I mean, maybe you're also like environmentally conscious and you don't want to like waste wood. I mean, I use wood, I use dye bond, I use paper. I'm going to start using other kinds of paper. So I'm kind of open, but you guys can make your own decisions about your, presentation or style of the encaustic work. Okay. Okay. So since I already painted the horses, I'm just going to put them to the side. But what I wanted to show you was sort of the scraping back process. And to scrape back, I like to use a couple different tools. So I might use a palette knife, a paint scraper, a pottery tool. I really like these palette knives. So I have these palette knives in all different shapes and sizes. Okay. And they're probably my favorite. And then my other favorite is, of course, the razor blade, right? So these are sort of my scraping back tools. And this is like for removing wax, right? So look, it kind of goes like this is maybe the harshest one, this one, then it goes this one, then this one. This is like would be for a very curved area, right? Because, and what I like about the palette knives is that they're flexible, so I can bend them. You see that? I can put it on a curve and scrape the wax like this. I could never do that with this, right? Or this. I can't do anything except literally remove a lot of wax. And then this would be my lightweight, right? This wooden one would be my lightweight. And if I clean them, I put them on the hot plate to clean them, right? And then pick them up and use them. How you guys doing?
Good. I have a question about what kind of adhesive you used when you were gluing stuff to dye bond. What kind of adhesive did you use?
I'm so sorry I just dropped you guys because I'm trying to plug my cord in so I don't lose you. You know what? I always am using the same adhesive, which is that PVA glue.
Okay, and that adhered to metal, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I don't see anything. What happened?
I don't see you either.
Okay, wait, hold on. There I am.
Now I see you.
Okay. So I use the PVA glue all the time for everything, but I think I mentioned to you guys that I got kind of, I didn't get mad at PVA glue, but I felt a little bit more aggressive. I also learned a couple burning techniques. So I introduced this guy to my arsenal of glues. And as far as I'm concerned, if Tight Bond doesn't keep it on there forever, then I don't know what will. So like, I mean, and at the end of the day, like I used to be really like proper, or let's even use the word like prissy about everything being archival, and I really cared a lot about doing everything perfectly, and I kind of was always trying to impress, like the big guns in the photo world and stuff. Now I just don't want anything to like lift up, right? So I mean, you can experiment. I do think that PVA glue is sufficient. I think sometimes when I'm making something really big, or if I'm collaging a lot of layers, like I might use the wood glue for the base coat, for the layers that are going closest to the wood. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the layer that's going closest to the wood gets the wood glue, and then if I'm putting like another layer of paper on top of paper before I start waxing, I'll switch to PVA glue. Right, so here are my two. These are pretty much my two diehards, right? pH neutral, professional quality archival adhesive, and then now honestly, I don't know any reason not to do this, but like maybe even mix them a little bit, right? Try a little mixy, like a little peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Right? So all you could be doing would be adding like strength and waterproofness, water resistance to this glue, right? And it's funny because this one's supposed to, it says it's water cleanup, but it's really strong stuff. I mean, I've seen this glue hold like warped pieces of wood together after they've been clamped and glued. I mean, it's pretty strong. Okay, same process. I don't consider the dye bond a difficult, challenging material to glue onto. I treat it just like wood,
okay,
or paper. I treat it exactly the same. I've also glued paper to stainless, like large sheets of metal, and also to plexiglass. So those are. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. How did the plexiglass work? Because I had thought about that, using that as well.
Oh, it looks cool. I mean, it just looks, it looks like wax on glass. It's cool.
I thought about doing that and then putting lights behind it.
Yeah. I mean, if you worked with like rice paper or something semi-translucent and you waxed it and glued it, I mean, you just have to play around, as you're working with the opacity levels and how translucent you want the waxes, how much light you want to come through them. But absolutely, I say, you know what? I always encourage artists to try everything. I mean, I've even worked with mosaic artists where we've used mosaic, like pieces of glass and sculpture with the wax. So, and the photos. So basically we did, and I can show you guys next week if you remind me, but basically I used the photo, then I used the hot glue gun to adhere the ceramic pieces, and then I waxed around them. So I think we talked a little bit about lifting the surface and building the surface. So I can do a little, you can work too, like on an actual 3-dimensional surface like this. Like you could glue photos to a physical cube. I mean, like, right? Put photos on all the sides of the cube and then wax the cube, right? So that's like one thing.
Celia, there's going to be like so much plexiglass that comes out of this pandemic when you're looking for it.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you guys. That's right. Good thinking, Jen. Yeah, that's great thinking. So look, you guys, I made a book. So this is a cool. I've made these in the past, like over the years. But in my workshop this weekend, I happened to just make one. So this is actually just 2 pieces of wood, right? One here, one here. I made a bind out of actually just masking tape, grip tape, and then I took one photo and spread it across the center as the center fold, and then waxed the whole thing and painted it.
Beautiful.
So then it's like stand-up art.
Cool.
Right? Isn't that beautiful? Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
I don't know how it's coming across on the lighting, right?
Yeah.
And then I waxed both the sides.
That's cool.
Or the backs, sorry.
Very cool.
Thank you. I was really happy with that. I've made stuff like that before. I actually used to buy like book guts and glue all the pages closed and then split it so it would stand up and then just wax it. So it's just like paper, but it would stand up like that, and then I would have a photo in the center. But it's always nice to think about things outside of 2D flat, needs to go framed on the wall. It's always just nice to think in other ways, right? So, and we'll talk about that throughout this class. I mean, also combining, what happens when you combine, like I have these little like square gauzes, and I did a piece in my show last year where and these are kind of neat, they're kind of like fuzzy, but I literally glued each one down in a checkerboard, and then waxed over the fabric to kind of get the feel of the and all the little threads in the wax, right? So wax and fiber, or wax and, hair, or wax, 3D. There's a lot of things you can do with the wax. You can also make molds with the wax and then adhere them to each other, right? I mean, and again, if you're interested in wax, you're probably definitely interested in other things that are also tactile, right? Or fibrous, or irregular, or imperfect, right? Okay.
Yes.
So those are some things that go along with. So let me show you guys how I paint on the paper. Okay, so I'm going to do a demo of what I call sort of like the easy. This is not easy like as in bad, but easy as in like easy. Like all art doesn't have to be painfully difficult, right? And great art can be effortless. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make the art better if it's harder, right? But that was a principle or an idea that I sort of had to wrestle with, because for a long time I felt like if I didn't really suffer a lot to make the art, it wasn't as valuable. Right? And now when I think back on that, I think that, God, why did I torture myself? Why did that, where did that come from? So these ideas that we get in our heads about how we judge our art, or how we think about our art, or our creative process, are important to look at, and to make sure that you're, not missing something, not missing an opportunity, or not missing, maybe something easier for you, or making it more accessible, right? Because honestly, I like to make a lot of art, and I think that the more art I make, the better it will be. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's kind of my method, is I just like to practice a lot. Okay, so, and one of the ways I practice is experimenting. All right, so I have 2 photos glued onto paper. I have 2 photos that are actually of wax pieces. So this is kind of interesting too. Maybe you finish a wax piece and you love it, but you want to make additions of it, or maybe you want to just change one part of it. And I do think that this is